Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, there are days when the weight of the world feels heavier than we can bear. We wake up, and from the moment our feet touch the floor, trouble seems to meet us at every turn. A harsh word, a heavy loss, a door closed when we had prayed it would open. On days like these, it's easy to believe that life itself has turned against us. But I want to tell you something from the depths of my heart. It's just a bad day, not a bad life. The sun does not cease to shine simply because the clouds cover it. Even in the storm, the light is still there, waiting to break through. And in the same way, God's love for you has not lessened just because today feels hard. We are told in the Scriptures that His mercies are new every morning, not once a year, not only on days when things are easy, every morning, which means tomorrow holds fresh mercy for you. You may feel weary, worn down by burdens you can't seem to shake, but hear this: you are not alone. The Lord walks beside you even when you can't feel His presence. The path may be dark, but His hand is steady. He will not let you fall beyond His grace. I know this. The greatest stories of hope begin in the valley. Some of life's most beautiful blessings are born out of the hardest trials. What feels like a dead end today could be the place God starts something new in your life. Pain, as sharp as it may be, can prepare you for a purpose you do not yet see. When you are hurting, when you are tired, lean into faith. Trust that there is a plan greater than your pain. When you put your trust in God, you trade your fear for hope, your sorrow for peace. He will never waste a tear you cry. Every heartbreak, every setback is known to Him. Friend, a bad day does not cancel the promise of a beautiful life. You are not forsaken. This is just a page in your story, not the whole book. The sun will shine again. There are better days ahead. So lift your head, wipe your tears, and hold on. Because it's not a bad life, it's just a bad day. And better days are coming. There are moments in each of our lives when the weight of sorrow feels too heavy to bear. Days when we sit quietly, looking at the circumstances around us, and wonder if things will ever be bright again. We all experience those moments when hope seems distant and the road ahead feels uncertain. Bad days come to all of us. They visit the rich and the poor, the young and the old. They visit the faithful and the doubting alike. Yet in these moments of weariness and struggle, there is one truth that holds firm, steady as the morning sun. Our suffering is temporary, but God's love is eternal. When we are caught in the middle of hardship, it's easy to believe the pain will last forever. Pain can blur our vision. It can make it hard to remember the days when we laughed, the moments we felt joy, or the times when peace filled our hearts. It's as if the clouds have covered the sky for so long that we begin to wonder if the sun has burned out altogether. But the truth is, the sun has not stopped shining. It is simply hidden for a moment. And so it is with the love of God. His love never stops shining, even when life's trials try to cover it. God's love is not dependent on our circumstances. He does not love us more on our good days and less on our bad days. His love is constant. His grace is unfailing. When we are standing tall and strong, He loves us. When we are broken and struggling to lift our heads, He loves us just the same. In the middle of your worst day, God's love for you is as fierce and unwavering as it has ever been. The Bible tells us that His mercies are new every morning. Every morning. That means that no matter how dark yesterday was, no matter how broken we felt last night, when we awaken, His mercy is fresh, waiting for us like the dew on the morning grass. It does not matter if we stumbled yesterday or felt defeated. Today His grace meets us again. His love is faithful when we are faithless. His mercy flows freely, not because we deserve it, but because He is good. Bad days may come, but they do not define the life God has planned for you. A single storm does not mean there is no summer ahead. A night of weeping does not mean joy will never return. In fact, the psalmist writes that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. That is a promise we can hold on to even when the night feels long and restless. Morning is coming. The sun will rise. God's plan is still in motion, even when we can't see it. Sometimes we believe that our bad days are signs that we've failed, that we've taken a wrong turn, or that God has forgotten about us. But that's not true. Even Jesus, who was perfect in every way, experienced bad days. He wept. He felt sorrow. He was betrayed. But those bad days did not diminish his purpose. In fact, they prepared the way for his greatest glory. And so it is with us. Bad days do not cancel our purpose. They do not erase the plans God has for us. They may, in fact, be the very soil where something new is being planted in our lives. God's love is the anchor in the middle of the storm. When the wind howls and the rain beats down, his love holds us steady. We may feel tossed about. We may wonder if we can withstand the waves, but we are not alone. God's love is our shelter. His arms surround us. He promises to never leave us nor forsake us. Not on the easy days, not on the hard days. He is faithful through it all. And while our suffering may feel like it stretches on endlessly, it does not. Pain may visit, but it will not stay forever. Hardship may knock on our door, but it will not take up permanent residence. We may walk through the valley, but we will not live there. We will come through the other side because God leads us. He restores our soul. He prepares a table before us, even in the presence of our troubles. There is a season for everything. Seasons of hardship do not last forever. Just as winter gives way to spring, and spring gives way to the warmth of summer, your life is moving forward. God's love is what sustains you in every season. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are loved by a God whose love knows no end. Today may be difficult. You may feel tired, but this is not the end of your story. This is a chapter, not the conclusion. God is still writing. He is still moving. His mercies are still new. His promises are still true. And no bad day has the power to change that. So even now, in this very moment, lift up your eyes. Remember that you are held by love that cannot be shaken. His love endures beyond your bad days. His love remains through every trial. Our suffering is for a moment, but God's love, his love is forever. There are times in life when the weight we carry feels too heavy to bear. We find ourselves standing at the edge of uncertainty, staring into a darkness that seems to have no end. In moments like these, it's easy to believe we are alone. Our hearts ache. Our minds are filled with questions that seem to have no answers. We wonder why the burdens have come. We wonder where help will come from. But even in those moments, especially in those moments, we are not abandoned. We are not walking this path by ourselves. God walks beside us even when we cannot see him or feel him. It's a tender truth that sometimes in the depths of our sorrow, his presence is quiet. We look around and we do not hear his voice, we do not feel his hand, and yet he is there. Just because we cannot sense him does not mean he has turned away. Our emotions may waver, our faith may falter, but his promise remains sure. He has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And our God is not a God who breaks his promises. There is no valley so deep that his presence cannot reach. There is no night so dark that his light cannot shine. Even when life strips away the things we've leaned on, when we feel as though we are standing in an empty room, his love surrounds us. He is there, steady and faithful, a quiet strength in the middle of our storm. We may not hear the thunder of his footsteps, we may not feel the warmth of his hand, but he is there, working all things together for our good, even when we cannot understand it. Sometimes God's presence is not announced with fanfare. It comes quietly. It comes like a gentle whisper to a weary heart. It comes in the unexpected kindness of a friend, the comfort of a prayer whispered in the night, or the sudden peace that settles over us when we least expect it. These are the moments when we realize He has been with us all along. His presence has been the strength that carried us when we did not have the strength to walk. Our trials can make us feel isolated. Pain has a way of convincing us that no one understands. But there is one who understands. Jesus himself knew what it was to suffer. He knew what it was to feel forsaken. On the cross, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He tasted the bitter cup of sorrow so that we would never have to walk through our sorrow alone. He bore our griefs and carried our sorrows. He knows every tear we cry. He counts them, and He holds us close in our pain. We do not walk this road without purpose. Though we cannot see the end from where we stand, God can. He sees beyond the valley. He sees the sunrise on the other side of the longest night. And He walks every step with us to lead us there. He does not leave us to navigate our suffering alone. He walks with us, not as a distant observer, but as a compassionate shepherd who stays near to his sheep. The enemy would have us believe that our suffering is proof we are abandoned, that God has forgotten us. But that is a lie. God's word tells us again and again that He is near to the brokenhearted. He saves those who are crushed in spirit. When the world turns away, when others cannot understand the depth of our pain, He remains. He stays close. He does not turn away from our weakness. He draws near to it. And there is comfort in knowing we are not the first to feel this way. Throughout Scripture, we find men and women who walked through trials that seemed impossible to bear. Joseph sat in a prison cell, falsely accused and forgotten by those he helped. Yet the Bible says that the Lord was with Joseph. David, hunted by his enemies, cried out from caves and wilderness places, feeling forsaken and afraid. And yet he declared, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." These are not empty words. They are the declarations of those who learn by experience that God never leaves His children alone in their suffering. God's presence does not always remove the pain immediately, but it redeems it. It gives us hope in the middle of our heartache. He reminds us that we are part of a story far bigger than this moment of struggle. He is writing a testimony through our trials, and He does not leave us to endure them in isolation. He walks beside us, step by step, breath by breath. When we feel we cannot take another step, His grace carries us. When we are too weary to speak, He hears the groaning of our spirit. When we are surrounded by silence, He is listening. When we feel we are falling apart, He holds us together. You may be in a place right now where the pain seems unbearable. You may be wondering why God feels so distant. But I want you to know He is closer than you think. He is nearer than your very breath. He is not a God who stands at a distance watching you suffer. He walks through the fire with you. He stands in the storm beside you. He is with you always. Even when you cannot feel Him, He is there. Pain is something every one of us faces in life. It comes in many forms: loss, disappointment, rejection, failure. There are days when the weight of it seems too heavy to carry, days when the questions come faster than the answers. We wonder why things have happened the way they have. We wonder if the path we are on has come to a dead end. But often what feels like the end is not the end at all. Pain, as hard and unwelcome as it may be, can be the prelude to a greater purpose. It can be the beginning of something new, something better than we ever imagined. It's hard to see that in the middle of the storm. When we are hurting, it's natural to feel like the pain is the only thing that's real. But there is a truth that runs deeper than our pain. God does not waste our suffering. He does not allow us to walk through difficult days without a purpose. Every trial has the potential to shape us, strengthen us, and prepare us for something greater. Sometimes the greatest growth happens in the hardest seasons. The roots of a tree grow deep when the winds blow strong. In the same way, our faith can grow stronger when we are tested. We may not realize it at the time, but later we can look back and see how the struggle prepared us for something more. It stretched us, it deepened our compassion, it gave us wisdom we wouldn't have gained any other way. God's Word tells us that He works all things together for good for those who love Him. Not some things, not just the easy things, all things. That includes the painful things. It includes the heartbreak and the setbacks and the disappointments. Even when we can't see how, God is weaving those difficult experiences into a bigger picture. A picture that leads to blessing and purpose. Sometimes the pain we experience becomes the foundation for a new calling. The struggles we face can open doors to serve others in ways we never imagined. A person who has walked through loss can offer comfort to someone else in mourning. Someone who has battled through sickness can bring hope to another facing the same fight. Pain has a way of opening our eyes to the needs of others. It softens our hearts and makes us more compassionate. What we once saw as a setback can become the very thing God uses to reach others through us. There are moments when life seems to knock us down so hard that we wonder if we will ever rise again. But it is in those moments that God is often doing His greatest work. Sometimes He allows us to be emptied so that He can fill us with something new. Sometimes He allows doors to close because He is leading us to something far greater on the other side. What feels like rejection can be God's redirection. What seems like a failure can be the beginning of a new opportunity. Pain is a teacher. It teaches us to rely on God in a deeper way. It teaches us to let go of things we thought we needed so we can receive what God knows we need. It teaches us patience, endurance, and trust. And in time, we come to understand that the pain we endured was not in vain. It was preparing us for the next chapter of our story. Throughout Scripture, we see example after example of people whose greatest purpose came after their greatest pain. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery. He spent years in prison, forgotten and alone. Yet in time he was raised to a position of great influence, where he was able to save an entire nation from famine. Joseph himself said to his brothers, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." His pain was not wasted. It was the prelude to a purpose he never could have imagined. David spent years running for his life, hiding in caves, uncertain of his future. But those years were not wasted. They were shaping him into a man after God's own heart, preparing him to be king over Israel. Ruth lost her husband and left her homeland, but her loss led her to a new life, a new family, and a place in the lineage of Jesus himself. Even Jesus endured the pain of the cross, but through his suffering came the greatest gift of all, salvation for all who believe. What feels like a painful ending can be the beginning of a beautiful new purpose. We may not see it now, but God sees the whole picture. He knows what He is doing. He knows the plans He has for us, plans to give us hope and a future. Our job is to trust Him in the process, to believe that the pain we are experiencing is not the period at the end of our story, but rather a comma, a pause before the next sentence, the next chapter, the next blessing. Pain is never easy, but it is not meaningless. It can be the preparation ground for a greater purpose. The waiting, the tears, the unanswered questions, they are not wasted. God sees them all, and in His time He will bring beauty from the ashes. He will take what was meant to harm us and use it for our good. He will turn the setback into a setup for a blessing. And when we come through on the other side, we will be able to see that the pain we thought would break us was the very thing that God used to build us for something greater. Fear has a way of creeping into our hearts when life feels uncertain. It comes quietly sometimes, like a whisper in the night, and other times it crashes in like a wave we didn't see coming. Worry begins to build, and before we know it, we're caught up in a storm of what-ifs and if-onlys. We worry about tomorrow. We worry about what we can't control. We worry about the things that might happen, the things that could go wrong. Fear takes root, and if we aren't careful, it can grow into despair. But faith changes everything. Faith turns fear into hope. Faith gives us the courage to trust in something greater than ourselves, someone greater than our circumstance. When we place our trust in God, we trade our worries for His peace. We begin to see that our bad days do not have the final word. Faith is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to trust God even when we are afraid. It is the choice to believe that He is in control when everything around us feels out of control. Faith lifts our eyes off the storm and fixes them on the one who walks above the wave. It reminds us that we are not alone in the struggle and we are not powerless in the face of uncertainty. God is with us, and when we trust Him, we find a hope that fear cannot destroy. Trusting God doesn't mean we will never face difficulties. It doesn't mean we won't have bad days or moments of doubt, but it does mean we have a safe place to bring our fears. We have a loving Father who invites us to cast our cares on Him because He cares for us. He knows our hearts. He sees the things that weigh us down, and He offers us peace in exchange for our worry. His peace is not based on circumstances. It is not something we earn or achieve. It is a gift that comes from knowing we are held in His hands. There is something powerful that happens when we release our grip on fear and place our trust in God's plan. Fear loses its power over us. It no longer controls our thoughts or steals our joy. We may still face the same challenges, but we face them with a different perspective. We are no longer driven by fear of the unknown. We are anchored by faith in the one who knows all things. We can say with confidence that no matter what comes our way, God is already there. He has already made a way. He has already written the ending, and His plans are good. Hope rises when we remember who God is. He is faithful. He is loving. He is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. He is the God who parted the seas, who calmed the storm, who raised the dead. And He is the same God who walks with us through our darkest days. When we put our faith in Him, we are reminded that there is nothing too difficult for Him, no problem too great, no fear too overwhelming. He is greater than all of it. Sometimes we think we have to understand everything before we can have peace. We want to know the why and the how. We want to see the entire path before we take the first step. But faith doesn't require all the answers. Faith trusts in the one who has the answers, even when we do not. Faith says, I don't know what's ahead, but I know who is leading me. And that trust turns fear into hope. Hope isn't wishful thinking. It's not crossing our fingers and hoping for the best. Hope is the confident expectation that God is who He says He is, and He will do what He has promised. Hope stands firm even when the winds blow strong. Hope keeps us steady even when everything around us feels uncertain. And faith feeds that hope. The more we trust in God, the more our hope grows. Bad days will come. We will have moments when life feels heavy. But when our hearts are grounded in faith, those bad days lose their grip on us. We may feel the weight for a moment, but we are not crushed. We may feel fear rising, but we are not controlled by it. Faith reminds us that this moment is not forever, that God's plan is bigger than today's problem, that His peace is deeper than our worry. There is a quiet strength that comes from trusting God. It allows us to rest even when life is unsettled. It gives us courage to move forward even when we can't see what's ahead. It turns our focus from our fear to His faithfulness. And in doing so, it gives us hope. So when fear comes knocking, we can answer with faith. When worry tries to take over, we can choose to trust instead. When bad days come, we can hold on to hope because we know the one who holds us. His peace is real, His love is unshakable, and His plan is still unfolding even when we cannot see it. Faith does not promise a life without trials, but it does promise we will never walk through them alone. And as we trust in God, our fear fades and hope rises in its place. We find strength we didn't know we had. We find peace that makes no sense by the world's standards. We find that even in our hardest days, we are held by a love that never fails. Faith turns fear into hope, and hope carries us forward into the promises of God. Life is a journey made up of seasons. Some are bright, filled with joy, laughter, and moments that make us feel as if the sun will never stop shining. Others are heavy, weighed down by sorrow, disappointment, or uncertainty. There are days when it seems like everything is falling apart. Plans unravel, hopes are delayed, dreams are challenged. On those days, it can be easy to believe the lie that a bad day defines our whole life. But the truth is, one bad day doesn't cancel the promise of a beautiful life. It doesn't erase the blessings God has in store for us. It doesn't take away the potential of tomorrow. Life is more than a single moment, more than a rough patch or a painful season. There is always hope beyond today's troubles. It's important to remember that a bad day is just that. A day. It's not a lifetime. It's not the full picture of who we are or what our life holds. It's easy to lose perspective when we're in the middle of the storm. The hurt feels magnified and the disappointment looms large. But if we step back and look at the bigger picture, we can see that our story isn't over. The hard days are part of the journey, but they are not the destination. Every life has valleys and mountains. There are seasons of waiting and seasons of harvest. Just because we're walking through a valley today doesn't mean we won't stand on a mountaintop tomorrow. The Bible reminds us that there is a time for everything, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Life shifts and changes. What feels heavy today can be lightened by hope tomorrow. What seems broken today can be restored in ways we never expected. Sometimes when we face difficult days, we assume that they define our future. We start to think that because things are hard now, they will always be hard. But that is not how God works. He is always moving, always working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it. His promises are not dependent on our emotions or our circumstance. They stand firm. Just because we're having a bad day doesn't mean God's plans for us have changed. His purpose remains, His love remains, His mercy is new every single morning. There is power in holding on to hope. Hope reminds us that today's troubles are temporary. They don't get the final say. Hope pulls us forward when our strength feels weak. It speaks life when all we hear is discouragement. It tells us that what we are experiencing right now is only part of the journey, not the whole story. One bad day doesn't erase all the good days that have come before. It doesn't cancel the potential for joy and peace in the days to come. We must resist the urge to let one difficult moment overshadow the goodness that God has already poured into our lives. And we must trust that He is not finished. The same God who has been faithful in the past will be faithful again. Sometimes a bad day teaches us things that easy days cannot. It gives us strength we didn't know we had. It brings lessons we might not have learned any other way. It can soften our hearts and make us more compassionate to those who are hurting. God uses every part of our lives, both the beautiful and the difficult, for His greater purpose. And often what feels like a setback is actually a setup for something better. We don't have to let a bad day rob us of gratitude. Even in hard times, there is still good to be found. There are still blessings to count, even when they seem small. A kind word, a smile from a stranger, a quiet moment of peace, these are reminders that beauty can still be found, even on the hardest days. Focusing on gratitude shifts our perspective. It helps us see that there is more to our life than the struggle we are facing in the moment. God's promises are not canceled by a bad day. His love doesn't waver because of our emotions. His plans for us are not diminished by the obstacles we encounter. He sees beyond today. He knows the future He has for us. And it is good. He calls us to keep going, to trust Him, and to believe that there is something more ahead. When we feel overwhelmed, we can rest in the knowledge that God is not overwhelmed. He is steady when we are shaken. He is constant when life is uncertain. His peace is available even in the middle of chaos. We can lean on Him. We can cast our cares on Him. We can be honest about our struggles and still hold on to hope. There is a beautiful life waiting beyond the bad days. We may not see it yet, but it is there. Sometimes the beauty is revealed slowly, like the sunrise after a long night. Other times it breaks through suddenly, surprising us with joy. Either way, we can trust that God is faithful to bring light after darkness, joy after sorrow, peace after pain. One bad day doesn't cancel what God has promised. It doesn't define who we are or determine our future. It is simply a moment in time, and time moves forward. Seasons change, hearts heal, hope returns. And life, even with its ups and downs, can be beautiful again. So we take it one day at a time. We trust that God is with us in every season. We hold on to hope that tomorrow can be better than today. And we remember that no matter how difficult a day may be, it is not the whole story. There is still more to come. And with God leading the way, that future is filled with promise. God bless you.